I've been very public about my story, my journey. Uh, Everything I post on social media is all about mental health awareness, suicide prevention. Trying to get men, especially, to realize that there's no shame in asking for help. But a lot of us feel embarrassed or feel ashamed or feel vulnerable, and trying to get us to realize that that's okay. And I've had guys call me from all over the country who want to talk to me, see my story. They understand what I went through. They're going through the same thing. I've probably walked at least 10 guys back from the verge of suicide and just get them
Amazing.
stable and realize that there is a tomorrow and there is hope.
Welcome to Mosaic Minds, the podcast where every episode is a colorful blend of perspectives, ideas, and conversation. Each week, our diverse team of hosts brings their unique backgrounds, experiences, and interests to the table. Mosaic Minds is your invitation to join the conversation to see the world through a kaleidoscope of viewpoints. So grab a seat, tune in, and let the mosaic unfold before you. Welcome back to another episode of Mosaic Minds Podcast. My name is Nick. This is Jason. And tonight we are joined by former NBA All-Star James Donaldson, but his impact goes way beyond the basketball court. He is the founder of Your Gift of Life Foundation. He's dedicated to mental health and suicide prevention and the author of Celebrating Your Gift of Life, where he shares his journey from struggle to purpose. James, you've had an incredible journey from dominating in the NBA to becoming a lead voice in mental health. What was the moment that made you shift your focus from basketball to advocacy?
Wow. It's been an incredible journey and a long, difficult one as well to get to where I am now. But, I've always been an athlete that had a lot of interests outside of my sport. So very entrepreneurial, community-minded, and trying different things throughout my career. But this whole mental health thing came upon me, and I didn't know the first thing about mental health challenges before. I'm like most guys, just kind of, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep on going, and don't cry about it. Well,
Yep.
I learned that's probably not the best way to go about it. Mine came about 10 years ago. I just celebrated my 10th anniversary of a major open heart surgery I had for an aortic dissection back in January 2015. I don't know if you know much about aortic dissections, but very few people survived this operation in the first place, and it's kind of the precursor to an actual aortic rupture. And if
Wow.
your aorta ruptures, you've got 10, 15 heartbeats left in you, and that's it.
Right.
So mine was right on the verge of that happening. We discovered it right in time. I was out on a golf course with a bunch of buddies trying to play a round of golf. And even showing up at the course, I knew something wasn't quite right. My back was killing me. I was sweating profusely. I was nauseous. And I told the guys, hey guys, I can't play today. I need to go and see my doctor, see what's going on. So I made a short drive over to my doctor's office, and upon entering his reception area of the office, everything just went black. I mean, I fell out right there, and they did a quick diagnostic scan on me,
Wow.
determined it was my heart, threw me in the ambulance, and straight to surgery, 12 and a half hours of emergency open heart surgery to repair this near rupture. It was the diameter of my aorta had swollen to about 5 times its normal width.
Whoa. Wow.
So it was right on the verge of bursting. So luckily, I listened to myself and just said, hey, I got to go see what's going on with this. And woke up. They put me in a medically induced coma for two weeks, just to keep my body cool, keep my brain from swelling. I woke up 2 weeks later, spent 2.5 months in intensive care, and pretty much the rest of 2015 flat on my back, just trying to recover on pain medications and appointments, and just trying to hang in there and trying to recover. That was the first of 4 major surgeries. that surgery was for the ascending, the upper aorta. The next year, 2016, we did the descending aorta, the lower portion of it. It needed to be repaired as well. And what they do, they put this material mesh kind of stuff inside your vessel, and it just reinforces it. So it's all up in there, 4 or 5 inches on the top, 4 or 5 inches on the bottom is reinforced with the mesh. And that's going to be there for the rest of my life. So that was part 2. And then, part of what happened, your body gets so compromised with these very invasive surgical procedures, especially something like this in a hurry. They had to cut open my breastbone and pry everything open, so they were in a rush to get in there. So they damaged my right lung upon doing that, and it had partially paralyzed and shrunk up to about a third of its normal size. So I felt like I had a piano on my back, even trying to walk across the street. So we had to go in there and stretch out that whole cavity again and push all the abdominal material back in place because it was moving up into the lung capacity area. And they fixed that. That was another surgery. And then also an arterial bypass up here because one of the arteries off my aorta was kind of pinched off. They didn't think I needed it anymore. But it was one of the main arteries to my brain.
Oh,
and
my
so
gosh.
I would get very lightheaded. I'd get just, very fatigued, very lightheaded. So they had to go in there and try to do an arterial bypass to reroute the blood up to the brain again. So 4 major surgeries in 5 years. And needless to say, my whole world fell apart. I was running my business. I had a physical therapy outpatient orthopedic business for 28 years. And I was running that as the owner and the operator. And, I pretty much delegated all of that out to my managers to run things. But, managing and owning and running are 2 different things.
Right.
So things started to go a little sideways around 2016, 17. I finally ended up closing it in 2018. But, I just felt my whole world had fallen apart. My wife walked out of my marriage. She took her son, my stepson, with her. My mother passed away during that time. I fell behind on my mortgage payments, ended up losing my home I had lived in for 40 years to foreclosure, went through a bankruptcy. And so everything that could go wrong went wrong during those 4 or 5 years. 2018 was the worst of the times because I just felt like life wasn't worth living anymore. And I went to see my doctor one day because I was having a succession of, a week or 2 of nights where I just wasn't sleeping through the night. I'd wake up at 1 or 2 in the morning and my mind would be racing, one, trying to figure out how to get some money together to save my business, another trying to figure out how to get out of this world and end the pain and the misery and the suffering. Those were the only 2 thoughts that would go through. So my doctor told me, he said, James, hey, you're suffering from depression and anxiety and suicidal ideations, suicidal thoughts. And I did have plans already in place on how to get out of this world. So that was the worst of times. 2018, I call it, was just 12 months of pure hell and despair and no end in sight. So that's what brought me to where I am now. It took me 12 months to work through all that. And when the darkness finally started lifting a little bit at the end of 2018, I believe God brought me through all of that for a reason, just to say, hey, you didn't know anything about mental health challenges before, James. Now you know. And I brought you through.
Yeah.
So you can use your platform of being a former athlete, bigger in life, figure, 7'2", 300 pounds. People are going to look up to you. They're going to listen to you. You're an African-American male. Men need to listen to you. African-American communities, Hispanic communities need to listen. So I'm going to put you back out there, and this is the work I want you to do. And that's what really turned my whole world around.
I love that platform. That's great.
Powerful.
Because it's hard. It's really hard for a man to admit that he has those kind of problems, and I can really resonate with your story. I haven't had necessarily the health issues, but everything else you mentioned happened to me. So I mean, like I went through a real dark spot as well. And I look back on it and tell people now that was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. And I bet I'm sure you probably say the same thing too, because that changed your world.
Yeah, it really did. It really did. And I've been very public about my story, my journey. Everything I post on social media is all about mental health awareness, suicide prevention, trying to get men especially to realize that, there's no shame in asking for help. But a lot of us feel embarrassed or feel ashamed or feel vulnerable, and trying to get us to realize that that's okay. And I've had guys call me from all over the country who want to talk to me, see my story. They understand what I went through. They're going through the same thing. I've probably walked at least 10 guys back from the verge of suicide, and just get them stable and realize that there is a tomorrow and there is hope. But you got to reach out for help with your doctors, and you get your team around you, But a lot of guys won't even talk to their wives or girlfriends about what they're going through. We internalize all this stuff and go out and do all kind of self-destructive behaviors just to kind of dull the pain that we're going through. Whether it's gambling or, drugs or alcohol or promiscuity, whatever it is, just to take our mind off it and kind of dull the pain that we're going through. And that's not the best way to deal with this stuff. You've got to reach out. You got to find one or two people in your corner, get your doctor on board, and just make your way through all that stuff. So that's what I went through.
James, we're blessed to speak with you tonight. One of the reasons you're on here, just so you know, is it's cliche to call you a gentle giant, but I was interested in your story. So, you've got a rugged NBA defender. You're not a small guy in stature. I'm paying you the ultimate compliment there. Tell me how your NBA career has transformed you into the person you are today, and some of the struggles maybe at training camp or recovering for an injury. How does that correlate to you, putting on the bootstraps, getting after it and making an impact off the court? Because with all due respect to you, I know you had a long NBA career, but at the end of the day, man, saving people's lives and bringing people to the table, allowing them to enjoy their family. I mean, I'm getting choked up when I'm talking about that, because that's a far greater accomplishment than the NBA. Speak on that a little bit for me, if you could, please.
Yeah. Well, I tell folks that my sporting background, my professional sports career really taught me is I think sports does teach one about perseverance and hanging in there and grinding it out and working towards a goal. We're just innately built that way. And this was no different, going through life challenges as it is going through a game or a season of challenges. You just have to keep on digging in, and, you deal with the ups and downs of it all. But ultimately, you get to your goal that you have set out there for yourselves. And I think people who get involved with sports, they have that benefit, that advantage, if they choose to use it. Sports was no different. We had a lot of great teams, a lot of not so great teams, good seasons, not so good seasons, but you keep on grinding away, for that promised land that's out there, that championship that you can finally raise up and feel like it's all worth it. So, I think that's what I really was able to apply to my mental health challenges that I went through. Didn't know I'd make it all the time. I mean, I'm so blessed to still be here, and just feel like every single day it's a blessing, and I'm just so happy to still be here.
I love that.
Just real quick, and then I'm going to flip it over to Nick for a question, but obviously this is a background behind us, but somewhere over where my finger is where Market Square Arena would have been. I know you've been in there, so we're obviously some miles away from that, but that's the skyline of downtown Indy. So I know you had some memories in there. So
I have a lot of great memories playing in Indianapolis. Oh yeah, no, that's fantastic. Although they were in the Eastern Conference, I was mostly in the Western Conference, so it was usually a home and away once a season type of thing. For most of my years, going to Market Square.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So James, what was it that caused you to pivot from overcoming your struggle to starting your foundation? Like what was kind of the moment that you decided, okay, it's time to reach out now and help other people now that I've overcome mine?
Well, that's the conversation I had with God, I think, is that, he reminded me that I have this tremendous platform that I didn't realize I had, but, he pointed out that, hey, you're a guy that a lot of people will listen to, especially men. And so I thought about, well, how best can I, organize all this and put it all together? And I thought about a 501c3 nonprofit foundation, of which I'd been, on the boards of many of them throughout the years. But I thought, I'll get my own started, and that way I can just really bring about that awareness, and be that voice and that advocate for what mental health awareness, suicide prevention is all about. And that's how I went about, creating Your Gift of Life Foundation. Because through it all, and at the end of it, especially, end of my journey, I realized that, life is truly the most precious gift that we have. And to throw it away or to discount it or to abuse it, it's such a big shame that, 50,000 people a year commit suicide in the United States. And it's just a shame that they get themselves to that point and they feel like there's no hope, there's no turning back. And unfortunately, that's what happens to so many of them.
So I'm going to use a basketball analogy here without really talking a little bit about that. There's time for that, but I'm more interested in away from basketball. But let's talk about the four quarters, just like you have in an NBA game. For the audience that doesn't know sports, obviously you're looking at 4 12-minute quarters. Walk me through the 4 quarters of your life, maybe college basketball, NBA, post, surgery, and then obviously current foundation. Walk me through that phase, quarters 1 through 4 real quick. I think it'd be a cool tribute to the NBA.
I will, yeah. And if we listen to Adam Silver, the commissioner, it might be 4 10-minute quarters soon.
There you go. There you go. I hope not too. It hurt the stats because then you can't really compare. The football messed up with 17 games, but that's another sport.
They keep tweaking. They're trying to get it right, but they're just
leave it alone.
Leave it alone. Leave it alone. No, my first quarter, of course, was my childhood and growing up, Sacramento, California, and a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force for 20 years, and then he went to work for the Postal Service for another 20 years. Hard-working military, disciplinary kind of guy that faith-filled man, church-going every Sunday, and that's how I grew up, just like him. And that was the first quarter all the way until I left Sacramento to go up to Washington State University. First time I've really been out of Sacramento to the Northwest. Growing up in California, we think California is all there is. But hey, I realized there's a big world out there, and basketball really opened up the world to tremendous opportunities to travel, to play, to compete. To see how good I can be. I mean, I wasn't a great basketball player as a high schooler or first couple years at WSU, but I eventually grew into one. I worked hard, I played hard, I trained hard, and eventually rounded into a pretty good college basketball player as a junior and senior. And in the early years of the NBA, starting out with the Seattle Supersonics, the year after they won their championship, they won in 79. I joined them in 1980. And that's probably, kind of my, second year, including most of my basketball career is in that second quarter that we're talking about. Finding myself as a young man, as a professional, finding out my identity, which I really didn't dig into and try to understand who I was until I was in my early 30s. Especially growing up with, as an African-American person and the history of our country. And I got involved in a lot of different social movements, social rights, and all these kind of things that culturally helped me form and shape who I became ultimately. I think the third quarter was after basketball. I retired officially in 2000 after playing 20 years professional basketball.
Wow.
So I did 14 in the NBA and another 6 overseas in Europe, 2 in Spain, 2 in Italy, and 2 in Greece. And just loved it. I mean, like I said, basketball helped me see the world and helped me learn about other cultures, other peoples, other languages. I was speaking other languages and things. And so that's the second quarter of my life. The third quarter really was, coming after basketball and becoming an entrepreneur, a business owner for 28 years with my physical therapy business. Very community-minded. I joined just about every group in town and just really got a sense of Seattle. I've been in Seattle for over 40 years now. And, got to know all the movers and shakers. I got involved with politics a little bit, running for city council and for mayor a couple of times here in Seattle, and just met with the mayor of Seattle on Monday this past week, a good friend of mine for 40 years. And so we're talking politics and just kind of staying with my ear close to the ground on many, many different boards, the chambers of commerce and different charitable nonprofit boards around town. So I just dove in and fully invested myself in Seattle. And I would say that was probably all the way up until my heart incident 10 years ago, 2015, was probably the third quarter. I mean, I was still in great shape, even at, when I had my first heart surgery, I was 57 years old at the time. Still running 3 or 4 days a week, 3 or 4 miles, but no problem. I mean, still in great shape, hitting the gym 5, 6 days a week, lifting up the weight room. I mean, it was just great. Life was good. And then it all just came crashing to an end. I can't even run around the block anymore now. So now entering into the fourth quarter, though, this is that now. My work with mental health awareness and suicide prevention, I call it the last, my next chapter in life. And it's been by far the most rewarding and fruitful and worthwhile work I've ever done. Far better than basketball ever was, far better than community involvement, far better than everything, because I'm saving lives. I go around the state of Washington. I speak to middle schools and high schools all over the state. And there's always, in an assembly of 500 kids, there might be 5 or 6 of them afterwards that come up and talk to me one-on-one and let me know that they're suicidal right now.
Wow.
A 13-year-old, a 14-year-old. A boy and a girl. And it's so sad, but I make sure the principal and the counselors, know who that kid is and make sure they go and provide the support they need. But that's so heartbreaking. But I know I'm touching the kids because so many of them are really struggling with their mental health as well. The bullying and the cyberbullying and kids trying to fit in as trans or LGBTQ or not feeling accepted in any sort. There's a great book out I just read called The Anxious Generation. I forget the author's name offhand, but it's a great book, just came out last year, The Anxious Generation. And it's all about how our kids now are growing up in a phone-based childhood. So since 2008, when the smartphone first came out, this is what these kids know, 14, 15-year-olds. Yeah. And that's all they have. And this is their best friend. This is their whole life in this little phone that they carry with them everywhere. And that's just such a detriment to them and their development as far as actually forming a personal one-on-one relationship with somebody else. They just haven't been able to do that. And so many of them are really struggling. The loneliness, the isolation, the anxiety. And so this is what I talk to the kids about and try to help them, wean off that phone a little bit, go out and make a real friend, a real personal friend, have a best friend. We all grew up, riding our bikes down the street and up and down the neighborhood, dreaming about what we want to be. These kids don't do that now. And it's really a shame.
It's tough for kids now. It's totally different. I mean, when we were kids, it was kind of like if you had a bully, you handled it. You went outside and you handled it. But now, man, it's ruthless. Like it's ruthless. They just spreading throughout the school, throughout the community. It's insane.
Especially.
Yeah, I love the way though that you weave in your faith with your message. Because I feel like that it's a little bit taboo sometimes. I grew up in church. My dad's a pastor. I feel like it's a little bit taboo sometimes to talk about mental health and Christianity in the same, in the same paragraph. So I really like how you do that.
Well, I almost challenge people to tell me not to talk about it, so I'm going to throw it in everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I live my life that way. I think people can just tell by watching that I'm a good guy. I must be a man of faith. There's something to that. And when they ask me, even if they don't ask, I say, hey, I owe it all up to the man upstairs, to my Lord and Savior. And that's what got me through this in the first place, And I say, God didn't put me through all these adversities. He allowed me to go through it, and he was right there with me all the way through and helped me get back on my feet and off and run into a life much better now than it ever was. I mean, minus all the material trappings. I mean, I don't have a house. I don't have, money in the bank. I don't have a lot of things I used to have. Don't even have a wife. I'm, looking for her again. So
you found something better, right? You found something better than all those things.
And God will provide. He's got another ram in the bush. I believe that. And so I'm not worried about those things. But yeah, minus all the material trappings, this life I'm living now is so much better than the ones I had before.
Now, James, I know you were blessed to stay in physical health, and I know you're striving for that, and you're focusing on the mental health. But since you're telling me you can't run very far and we're not in the same city, I can tell you a funny anecdote here. So we were playing a video game about a year or two ago, my son, and you were on the 2K video game.
Okay.
And I'm going to say I look at you from the film that I've done when I was younger as a rugged defender, good teammate, a physical presence, and a no-nonsense guy. I'm not calling you an enforcer, but you wouldn't mess around. If somebody was going to rough somebody up, you were right front and center. So I hope I'm accurately describing you. But the point I'm making is it was funny because I had to call my son and say, hey, remember that guy I played with and tore you up? Because you weren't the fastest guy on the game, with all due respect to you, but you were rugged, and I just took him right to the post, and he wasn't used to guarding the post, so I just tore him up with you. So thought I'd give you that shout out. So I got to do this to you, man. We've really got to know you a little bit, so I think we've earned a little bit of. Let's talk a little bit of NBA. Mention a couple teammates. Talk to me about the life and the career of the gentleman that you get to speak with, because with all due respect, we're mid-40s, so I want to learn a little bit about that guy because you talked about him in a special way, and then transition that into maybe a Orlando Blackman or somebody else that you might have played with. But I'm going to let you take the mic and kind of give a special shout-out to people that may need it in the NBA world.
Thank you. Yeah, I played what I feel and what's called often the golden era of NBA basketball. 1980 to the mid-90s to 2000. So that 20-year period was when all the great players the household names that we grew up with were playing. Magic and Bird came in the league in 79 and revitalized everything, got it all up and running again, bringing a lot of excitement to it. Dr. J was still around for a few more years. Abdul-Jabbar was the first game as a rookie I played with the Seattle Supersonics was against Abdul-Jabbar.
Wow.
I came in off the bench, Coach Wilkins called me and said, okay, James, go in and guard Kareem. It was like, late second quarter.
That's good stuff.
Here I am. I'm just a rookie, my first game. My knees are shaking. My heart's palpitating, and I didn't even run up and down the court yet. So I look over at Kareem, and, he's already scored 15, 20,000 points in his career, and I've got zero. And we get out there and start, running up and down the court, and I inadvertently hit him with an elbow or something, and I'm like, wow, he didn't hit me back, and he didn't get hurt. So at that point, I felt like, wow, okay, I think I can get the hang of this. So I was so afraid to hurt him or afraid to annoy him, and I chipped in 3 or 4 points that night. He went on to get his 30 points as usual. But that was my first break into the NBA. Welcome to the league. But I played against so many great players. Remember when they put out the first 50 all-time NBA greatest player list?
Absolutely.
Back in the 90s.
Absolutely.
I counted out, I played against 37 of those 50 guys.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yes. So everyone from Kareem and Shaquille O'Neal all the way to Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, all those guys. What a great era of basketball. So that's what I did. I loved every moment of it. I didn't know how good I could become, but I just kept working at it. And I was blessed to have a lot of great teammates. So the scoring onus was never on me to go out and score 20, 25 points a night. It was really to, be that clog, that clog in the middle, to fill that middle, to rebound, to block shots, to play defense, to be the enforcer guy as usual. And that was the role I played, and the role that I just embraced. I loved doing that kind of work. A lot of other guys got the headlines and things, but hey, as long as I could contribute and do my point, a double-double is always my goal every night.
A couple, to vibe with you just a little bit, the way that the NBA is now, I think you're going to agree with me, so I'm going to let it fly. It's ridiculous that 3 or 4 teams don't adapt that stud center in the middle. I mean, I don't know about you, but don't take this the wrong way, but I don't need you chucking up threes. Get me 10 rebounds, take a charge, do some dirty work, block out a guy, frustrate a guy, get a guy in foul trouble, go to the foul line, set some screens, get some dunks, tip ins, you know what I mean? I mean, it's just there's still a call for that, although they seem to be stretching further and further away from it. I think a bad I got to be careful what I say here, but I think a bad mentality, an enforcer, is needed in today's game, and it's further and further. It seems like it's slipping further and further away from that. But
yeah, for some reason, it became the thought that it was turning off the fans, that the game was too physical. Scores were in the 90s or so against the Knicks and those guys back there. I played against I played on the Knicks back in '92 with Patrick Ewing and Oakley and Starks and all those guys. We had a great team. We lost in 7 games, Eastern Conference Finals to Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan. But those were great teams, very, very physical. Every team had a big 7-footer that you had to go against. There were no nights off. There was no load management of only playing 12 minutes tonight. No, you get out there and play your 35, 40 minutes, and you just keep on going. That was a whole different era of basketball. I loved it. Today's game, you can't get me to turn on today's game. I just can't get into seeing guys chuck up threes from all over the court. And now they're trying to talk about cutting the quarters down to 10-minute quarters. It's just ridiculous. And so it's just too bad.
Yeah, I think hearing these stories and kind of transitioning back and kind of weaving that mosaic, I think we all have spaces of life, to throw it out on the table for you. I struggle like everyone, being mid-40s though, 60 pounds ago, I was a decent basketball player. I'm not going to talk about my accolades because you had far greater, but, I could play at one time. I played about 35 years, so I think staying active, staying competitive. I personally bass fish. So I bass fish in tournaments, drive about 18,000 miles a year. Talk to me a little bit about maybe something that hasn't come up in this conversation today that you like to do to keep yourself sharp to encourage someone.
Well, I'm a constant learner. I'm always striving to learn and learn more. I've learned several different languages over the years. Now I'm studying Mandarin Chinese.
Oh, wow.
And that's a brain workout.
I was going to say, that's not easy. Yeah, that's not easy.
It's not. But I feel my brain is really working. It's sharp. It's right on track. It's figuring out the characters. It's pronouncing the words correctly. And I speak simple Mandarin now. I don't speak it fluent, but simple enough to get by. And I spent several years in China before the pandemic, about 10 years, 3 or 4 months a year, doing the study abroad programs for the Chinese students coming to America. So that was a great experience and just loved it. So, I think you just have to find things to challenge yourself. And I don't know if enough people do that anymore. They just kind of coast through life with no real focus, no real purpose. And I've always been focused and always been purposed. And that's what I want to keep on doing.
James, the Lord's blessed me, and then I'm going to toss it over. Nick, I know, has a good question for you, but the Lord has blessed me because when I was in broadcasting 25 years ago, I went to school and have a degree in it, right? And put down the microphone for 25 years. And we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary with the podcast next week.
Wow.
And I just wanted to share that with you because it's weird how the Lord works and the fact that I always wanted to do it, to be very personable with you. Nick and I work together at a college.
Okay.
So we're changing lives daily to help airline mechanics. work on the planes and keep everybody, moving throughout the country. So I think what I'm saying there is it's nice to hear that you've used that as centric focused. And then I was able to use that as well, because what's not to like about talking to a guy that I watched on TV when I was a really young guy? I'm not afraid to tell you, we got one game that had Billy Packer, Brent Musburger, with a little cheesy basketball that kind of flew up and threw that basket. And I hate to say this, but growing up in Indiana, it was always the 76ers, the Lakers, your huge market teams. So it was kind of like I was forced into watching just a pool of 4 to 6 players, but we always read the USA Today's and the statistics and stuff. So that's kind of, and Indiana basketball's a little different. I'm not saying we're better. I'm just saying, from 3 or 4 years old, we're all playing it. So I just want to kind of toss that out to you. So
I'm aware of that culture. Yeah,
absolutely.
Go ahead,
yeah, no, I was just going to ask about your book. Like how did that come about, and what prompted you to write that? I mean, I'm sure it has something to do with your story.
It does, yeah. Well, I was careful to notate and remember as much as I could going through that very harrowing journey I went through in 2018, and I was able to recollect everything, all the thoughts I was having, and all the experiences I was experiencing, and put it down into a book. From the time I was on the golf course and noticing that something wasn't quite right, to the intensive care, to the medically induced coma, to recovering, and then going back to another surgery, and then another and another. And so I took the time to really put this all down in a book form, with a lot of information about my story, but also, more importantly, exercises at the end of every chapter that a person could introspectively ask themselves questions of, some of the things that they need to know about themselves. It might be about their faith. It might be about their most serious challenge they've ever had. How do they handle it? Have they ever been to a point of despair in their life, and how do they handle that? It really gets people to start thinking about what they've gone through and what they would do if they were in that situation. My story is, not totally unusual. A lot of folks go through these kind of things, but I really wanted to make sure I wrote it out in a simple layman's terms. I'm not a professional or anything in this area, and just really say to people, hey, what happened to me can happen to anybody at any point in their life. A series of life events that just become overwhelming. We can all handle 1 or 2 things. We all expect our parents to pass at some point. That's traumatic. None of us expect our kids to pass. That's doubly traumatic. And that will put you in a tailspin. This fentanyl crisis that we're in, we lost 100,000 young people to opioid overdoses. And this is a lot of young people who are gone now from their families and their loved ones. And that's causing a big crisis as well. And so we're all going to go through something, and you just have to prepare yourself as best you can.
Right.
I've got a whole bunch of steps I share with the kids when I do my presentation about making sure that you make some good friends in your life. Have 2 or 3 good friends. Put down the social media. Get away from that for a few hours a day. And our kids are just hooked on this. They say kids are up to 12 hours a day on average with social media.
Yeah. I love the idea of the book too, because, sometimes it takes knowing that other people, it's like, wow, it's not just me, someone else has gone through this or is going through this,
Absolutely.
So you don't feel like you're all alone.
No,
James, kind of reflecting back to the 4 quarters there, what I really like about you is you have the 4, you answered that very eloquently, and honestly, you really expanded on that. I'm going to pay you the ultimate compliment. The NBA didn't define your life. The NBA was a start to your life.
That's right.
And with all due respect to you, you overcome one hurdle, you step over a low hurdle, you step over a high hurdle, you're doing this, and it's inspirational to think that, hey, man, you could be putting it in neutral right now, but I got to be honest with you, I think you're putting it in overdrive right now, because that's a far greater calling than putting a ball through a hoop. And I'm not, by no means, I'll basketball be in my blood for the rest of my life, but at the end of the day, it's far greater to see that. How does someone, in your case, it wasn't fail, it was a refocus. How does someone refocus? Let's say they fail entrepreneurially. Let's say they fail with their marriage. Let's say they failed with their mental health. How does a person redefine their life keep going and then maybe come back stronger than they did the last time they faced adversity?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, and what happened to me when I went through my real traumatic experience with mental health, is I lost my purpose of life. Here I was, a husband, a business owner, a homeowner. I'd lost all of that, and I'd lost my purpose. Why am I here? What am I doing? Why do I even wake up in the morning? And you have to find something that you're passionate about, something that gives you a sense of purpose and meaning. And it's right there around all of us. A lot of us just don't identify it because it doesn't just pop up. It's not as exciting as NBA basketball, for one thing. So, but it became mental health. It became something that gets me out of bed in the morning and has me working my whole day on with my foundation, with my social media messaging and everything else. This is my focus now. This is my purpose. This is why I'm here. And I just encourage everybody to find something that, one, you're passionate about, and something that also that you can build a focus and a purpose around that gets you out of bed in the morning, gets you excited to get going every single day.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us don't have that. The old book years ago, The Purpose-Driven Life. I mean, what is your purpose?
Right.
And you have to be able to find that. It's not that difficult, but, mentoring's always been huge for me. And I have a lot of great mentors in my life. I just spoke to one of my favorite ones today, Coach Lenny Wilkins with the Seattle Supersonics, 87 years old now. And, I have breakfast with him every couple of months, and just him and we sit there and talk about life. He shares his great stories and the adversities he went through back in the 50s, caravanning through the South, in very segregated racial times in our country where he couldn't even eat in restaurants, had to eat out in the backyard. He couldn't go into the bathrooms, had to go outside, couldn't stay in a hotel with his white teammates. That's adversity. That's overcoming. We got it so easy now compared to what he went through. But he tells me and shares with me those stories. And I have a lot of great mentors like him that keep me focused, keep me accountable. And I think that's one of the reasons I really hung in there, because I didn't want to disappoint my great mentor like him and a couple others. Coach George Raveling was another one, my old Washington State coach.
One. Yeah, there you go.
Again, 87 years old. And Raveling and Wilkins were like a pair of crutches on either side of me going through my journey. I remember Coach Raveling telling me, said, "Hey, James, I knew you since you were 17 years old. I'm not going to let you throw it all away.
Yeah.
You come too far. You work too hard. I'm not going to let you throw it away." And he didn't let me throw it away. So you need people like that in your life.
That's powerful.
James, you've done an awesome job of letting us vicariously live through your life, because honestly, man, I saw you as the guy that had, and let's laugh a little bit, man. You had a long sleeve on one of your legs. That's kind of how I knew you, man. I mean, honestly, that I was like, I know who that is. I know he's a rugged defender. I know he does that.
Yeah.
You've done a really good job to allow our audience to realize that it's okay, because I'm going to be brutally honest with you, man. If I listen to you, I'd be sitting straight up in my chair because, I won't say any choice words, but this guy's 7'2", 270. Yeah. He's going to come across the table and get me. But I think you've showed your aggression on the court. Yeah. I think you've shown your humility off the court. Mm-hmm. I think you've redefined yourself 2 or 3 times, and I think each time you're a champ, and you get that, because as an 80-year, Lenny Wilkins, I know as a ball player, for the audience, and you know this, but as a ball player, I mean, I don't want to call him undersized, but let's say undersized physical on the court, very, from what I've heard, very trustworthy, very high expectations, very disciplinarian off the court. But look at the men like yourself that he shaped, and when you talk about those people and your inflection changes, it's just so cool to hear those mentors, because I have mentors that aren't, how do I want to say this, aren't household names, but at the same time, I fully agree that you got to always look up to someone and be striving for that. So I wanted to give you a thumbs up, and that's some strong stuff.
Well, I just hope, especially men that are watching, that they can see a big, tough, strong guy like me, get emotional and tear up and cry, that it's okay.
It is, yeah.
These are tears of strength. and tears of joy. They're not tears of shame and embarrassment. And guys need to see that. Before we wrap, I want to talk about a great teammate of mine. I'm going to his funeral on Friday. This is Gus Williams, who was the great point guard, shooting guard with the Seattle Supersonics and won the NBA championship with them back in 1979. He just passed away a couple of weeks ago at 71 years old. And I'm flying back tomorrow to New York to be at his funeral and to have a speaking part on the program. Gus was one of those great guys that just brought, his lively, positive personality everywhere he went, his energy. He was just, people fed off that. And unfortunately, so many of our guys find themselves in a really bad way years after their career is over. Destitute, no money in the bank, nothing really to show for their great career. And so I was with Gus throughout. He was, 5 years ago, he came down with a major stroke and meningitis and pneumonia all at the same time. Put him flat on his back for the last 5 years of his life. And to see somebody in that situation, I was FaceTiming with him every month or two and just letting him know how I loved them and all the Sonic Nation fans loved them and the teammates. But it just really means a lot to have relationships like this, especially for guys.
Yeah.
As men, we just don't allow our emotions to get there and be there. But that's the example I wanted to set out there for guys all over the country, all over the world. It's okay to show those emotions and to let people know that you're vulnerable, that you need help. And it's okay not to be okay even,
Absolutely.
But ask for help. Ask for help.
You mentioned purpose earlier, which I love because whenever I was struggling, that was one of the two, that along with gratefulness, the two of those things. Because if you're not grateful, it'll never be enough. So the two of those things together, purpose was really, it's nice to know that you're not just a meat sack walking around. That you actually do have a mission or a purpose in life. And sometimes finding your purpose is your purpose for the time being.
Yeah, that's right. I
love that.
2 more NBA things before we wrap. One, I'm the answer to a trivia question I found out.
Oh, nice.
Who played the most amount of seasons, most amount of games without ever attempting a 3-point shot? Me.
I was going to say.
Me.
I wouldn't have guessed it if you wouldn't have been on, but yeah. Okay.
I'm 0 for 0. So
like it.
I think even Kareem is like 1 for 4 or something. So 0 for 0. And the other one is, I think looking back over the years and all the great teams and teammates, my 2 favorite teammates I've ever been with were John Stockton and Karl Malone. I played 2 years with the Jazz at the end of my career. Those 2 guys just set the bar so high for everyone to follow. I mean, to the work ethic, no excuses, nothing held back. You put it out there on the floor and you just go for it. Led by Jerry Sloan, the coach. This was an organization and a team. I wish I'd joined them 5 years earlier in my career. I was a little bit long in the tooth when I joined them and didn't have much left in the tank.
Yep.
But I still was able to be part of this great situation. And Carl and John are 2 of my favorite friends, favorite guys right now.
James, I gotta piggyback that just a little bit. Jerry Sloan was in Terre Haute, Indiana, believe it or not, at Orion's. I walk in and I see a guy with a Carhartt jacket, real indescript, and with all due respect, wasn't the most well kept. He just looked like a normal dude. And I made eye contact with him and I smiled, and he really appreciated that I didn't make a deal out of it and try to get his photo and stuff because he didn't. He wanted to do his thing. Now, here's a funny story for you. Right around the time you were on that team, I was in Denver, Colorado, Dikembe Mutombo's rookie year.
Oh, yeah.
He had a brace on the hand. I watched Stockton and Malone. I'm trying to get my years right, but that might have meshed to where I either just missed you or maybe was at that game and season when I was a young man. So funny story, man. Mutombo's actually friends with a girl that went to my high school, and I just want to throw this out. As far as the humanitarian attitude, I think there's a lot of similarities there, man. You can light up a room, you're funny, but the funny story that I'm not proud to say is he had his hand And I was trying to reach out and touch his hand, and he basically literally waved his hand, and he's like, "Don't touch the hand, kid." So I could say to everybody I had a conversation with him. So
you got the finger wag.
This was cool, man. We laughed a little bit. We got emotional a little bit. You inspired the audience. You got people to see a side of you that hopefully you don't rarely get to, maybe share. But at the same time, you're out there and you're sharing it, I don't know, weekly, monthly, whatever you are at the schools. Keep doing a great thing. On a very personal note, my family has about 100 years of educational experience between teaching and administration. So we're all about mentors. We need guys like you that have a great story that we can listen to, give you the accolades, a kind of a fist bump over. This has been a great time, man. I'm blessed to have had you on, and you were very humble with your time, and I had a great time talking with you.
Yeah, this is a great message. And so just to end it, before I ask you how people can get your book and get a hold of it and all that, what would you give? What would be one piece of advice that you would give to that person right now, that 13-year-old you were talking about, or that 50-year-old that you're talking about that just feels like there's no way out of the darkness right now? Like I just can't make it out. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would tell them that they are not alone. I know you, and I know this intuitively. You feel like you're all alone.
Yeah.
It's the loneliest journey you'll probably ever walk through, this mental health struggle that so many of us find ourselves in, but you are not alone. And the first step of advice I give anybody is make sure you reach out to a medical professional. Don't try to self-diagnose what's going on or ask your cousin or your mom or somebody. Get a medical professional and make sure you get in front of them. They will help you put the team around you of mental health counselors and behavioral health counselors, nurses, and those kind of folks. And then you reach out and find one or two good friends that can be in your corner. Someone that you can call at 2 or 3 in the morning when you can't get sleep and your mind is running at 100 miles an hour like mine was. I've got text messages that I kept on my phone of desperately reaching out to people at 2 or 3 in the morning and just saying, hey, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the night. So have somebody, and they'll be there for you, but you got to have the people there in your corner. These iPhones only get you so far, and they're not going to help you in the middle of the night when you need somebody to be there for you and talk with you. So those are my two things. Get a medical professional and find one or two good friends to be in your corner unconditionally.
Great advice. Great advice. So where can people find out more about you? What are some of your, I don't know if you're on social media, What are some of your social media, if somebody wants to get your book, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I got tons of social media platforms, just search in James Donaldson, you'll pull me up on most of them. My nonprofit foundation is yourgiftoflife.org, and there tells my story. It gives a lot of great resources about mental health. Different companies and agencies all around the country ask me and contact me if they can put their link on my helpful resources page. So I have a helpful resources that goes dozens and dozens and dozens of them, of mental health resources for people, whether you're a veteran or, substance abuse, what have you. It's we have tons of resources. And then also, I just want to make sure that, people can see my story. They can also see a lot of videos I post. I've got a YouTube channel I just started about Your Gift of Life Foundation for Men, where I'm speaking directly to men about,
great.
Being in touch with your emotions, reaching out for help. I just put one together about grief and grieving based on Gus Williams passing just recently. How do men handle these things and how best to handle these things? So I've got a lot of resources out there. To get the book, it is on all the major online retailers, but if you want to personally signed, I actually personally signed it and inscribed a nice little message in there to you. You can go to celebratingyourgiftoflife.com. That comes directly to me, and I sign it off, drop it back in the mail to you, and wish you well. And that's the best way to get a personally signed one.
All right. Thank you so much, James. Matter of fact, I don't know about you, Jason. I think I might want a copy of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. Love to have you back sometime. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I'm sure Jason can say the same thing. Anything you want to wrap up?